Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you to today's webinar hosted by the IEEE Standards Association. My name is David Stankiewicz. I am your event producer for today's webinar on the topic of Policy for Artificial Intelligence, the Power of Imaginaries. Today's session is the third and final installment in a three-part series of events on policy for AI. In case you are wondering, our previous two sessions are available for playback on demand, so you can watch those if you missed the first two sessions from earlier in the year. And one last programming note, Cyrus Hodes will not be joining us today as originally planned, but we are super lucky to be joined by Tess Posner of the organization AI for All. Thanks so much for being able to participate, Tess. We really appreciate it. We are also welcoming back another panelist to the discussion. Arohi Jain from the AI Initiative is on board with us once again. So Arohi, thanks for being with us today. And with that, I'd say let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to kick things over to our moderator, John C. Havens. John, the floor is yours.
Just want to echo your welcoming. Welcome to everybody. Really appreciate you being here for the webinar. And just a quick introduction to our agenda. After I give a quick introduction to myself, we'll have our speakers do just a quick 20 to 30 second introduction of themselves. And then each of our speakers is going to give a quick about 5-minute or so presentation each. One thing I should say is we ended up switching the order here. It's actually going to go Konstantinos first, and then Nico is going to go second. Arohi is going to go third, and Tess is going to go fourth. So what that means is for about 20 minutes or so, you'll get to hear a real introduction into this idea of what imaginaries are and some of their thoughts. And we also have on our last slide, we'll be featuring it during that last 5 minutes or so, links where you can find out more information about all the speakers and the great work they're doing. So just quickly about me, I'm the executive director of a fantastic program called the IEEE Global Initiative on Ethics of Autonomous and Intelligent Systems. I'm really honored to be the moderator today, and with that, we'll go to our speakers. So Konstantinos, Tess, Arohi, and Nico in the order that you're listed here. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourselves, that'd be great. Konstantinos, we'll start with you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Konstantinos Karachalios, and as it's written there, I'm the Managing Director of the IEEE Standards, and I'm also a member of the Management Council of IEEE.
Wonderful, thanks. Tess, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, John. Hi, everyone. So glad to be here. I am Tess Posner, and I'm the Executive Director of AI for All, which is a nonprofit organization working to increase diversity and inclusion in AI. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tess. Arohi, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Arohi Jain. I'm the project leader for the AI Initiative, and we're currently managing a global civic debate on governing the rights of artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Thanks, Arohi. And Nico, last but not least, Nico Miailhe.
Hi everyone, glad to be here. So I'm the co-founder and president of Society, which I founded at the Harvard Kennedy School. And we basically specialize on questions of impact and governance of emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence. So that's why we started under the Future Society, the AI Initiative.
Awesome, thank you so much. And now we're going to go to our speakers. And Konstantinos, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can gladly say I have no PowerPoint slides. I will just talk. And this is not an easy topic that we're trying to address today. And because it is not easy to imagine what is imaginary. Because we have it in us. It's like the water in the aquarium. It is there, and it influences everything we're doing, but we don't see it. And we believe this is a reality, but it is not. There is something beyond it. The best way to make it explicable is by telling a story, but we don't have the time to do this. So I just am asking all the audience now to just think nature, natura, and close your eyes and tell yourself what you are seeing. Just for 5 seconds. Close your eyes, think nature, natura, and think of what you are seeing. And so I dare to say that many of you must have seen some untouched natural landscape. A forest, a river, a waterfall, the ocean, something like this. Very few of you may have seen yourself therein, humans. So what does it mean? And this is an imaginary. This is not the reality. Because the reality is we're part of it. We're inhabiting the earth. It is not far from us. It is never untouched. So what is the impact of this imaginary of nature, or the imaginary of truth, or of imaginary of freedom on our actions, and how this shapes the reality? So just to bring this to a conclusion, reality is not a hard reality. It is consisting very much of what we're thinking about it and how we intervene of it, and we're constantly changing this. And if we're not aware of this mechanism of how we are intervening and creating the reality around us, it is extremely difficult to evolve, to adapt it, and to make it more human-centric, because it has taken paths and roads which become really critical to our survival. Specific to technoscience, the technoscientific communities, they have their own imaginaries, their own dreams. Perhaps the best book which describes this is Thomas Kuhn, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, which is, Thomas Kuhn also has invented the term paradigm change. And it is not possible here to explain what is behind this, but what he says, and what I believe it is true, that the techno-scientific communities, they create their own dreams and imagination and their imaginary, which is extremely impactful on society, on our future. And there are two different categories of this imaginary, which perhaps I can briefly address here. One is the ontological, and the other is methodological. The ontological is what do we believe implicitly that nature is, and what we believe is the part of human in this nature, and also what we believe about human nature. And here there are different beliefs, different systems of belief, which are really not compatible. It is the dualism versus the monism. Monism means one. Monas is the unity, that everything comes from the same source. Let's say from something looking like matter, that the consciousness is the result of matter. This is, let's say, the materialism is a kind of monism. Then the other antithetical, let's say, theories, it is transcendence versus immanence. Immanence is everything is now and here, nothing gets lost, nothing gets added. This is Parmenides' universe, to use Popper's analysis. And contradicting to this is the transcendence. No, not everything is here. There are things that come in and come out, that disappear, and so on. Both are systems of belief. And of course, the ultimate, let's say, also religious discussion about soul versus matter and so on, and the predominance of the one over the other. And the scientists, they very clearly, they have made their choice in these ontological paradigms, which lead to a kind, since Descartes, to a kind of reductionist approach to both nature and humanity. And this has consequences, which I cannot now go further here. Perhaps they can be a little more developed in the course of our discussion. Now, the methodological approach is, we believe, because I say we, I'm also a scientist and engineer, that we're just solving practical problems. We have always good intentions. And if something goes wrong, then there are others that are responsible for this, never us. We just do the hammer. If you do the hammer to break a head, then it is not our problem. But it's not as simple as this. Because the way our imaginary intervenes in everyday reality, it changes its reality and causes a lot of, let's say, different events, and creates new event horizons. Perhaps the most optimistic event horizon created by technoscience is Buckminster Fuller, who said in the 70s that we brought our technical knowledge to a level that we don't need to worry anymore about satisfying the fundamental needs of humanity. We could stop making wars to satisfy fundamental needs. And this is true, but it does not happen because there are other imaginaries there that do not let this happen. And the question is how we can work on our imaginaries both as a community of scientists and engineers and embedded in a social structure to make humanity really fulfill its promise and not to have the negative horizons as described by Virilio. So to bring it to a conclusion, the question is we have to address now explicitly our implicit assumptions. I think the time of innocence is over. We cannot continue like this anymore. We have to add a layer of self-criticism, of self-reflection to what we're doing. And this should become part of our work. It should not be something nice to have or something for the small circles of philosophers and so on, but it must be embedded in our work. And this is the ambition of the IEEE initiative. It is to educate ourselves, the engineering and scientific community, to be able to take into account consequences of what we're doing, to think about it, to anticipate, and to take this into account in the design of what we're doing, to the development and implementation of technologies. This is not easy, but if we don't do it, then it doesn't look good. Not for us, for humanity. And I think we must become more self-critical and to work with others, to build bridges with other constituencies, like political actors, legislators, and so on, not to advise them. We're not the wise people who should advise them. Of course, we can inform them, but they're also quite intelligent people, most of them. But also to understand what is the implications of what we're doing. It is bi-directional, the bridges we should build. And this is basically why we started this initiative. We started in a small part of the spectrum, which is around the intelligent systems and ethical questions, but the problem we are addressing is much bigger, and this is just a start. And it's not by coincidence that IEEE recently has updated its code of ethics, which is a very short document, it's just one page, to take into account precisely what I'm talking about here. And we'll be pleased to send you our updated code of ethics, which has been very old. You may know that IEEE has been established by Edison and Tesla and Graham Bell and so on. And we still felt it is a time now to take a fresh look, and we did it. So, and I have not talked at all about now the artificial intelligence and so on, and this will be the topic of the next speaker, which is Nico, and I give him now the floor. And thank you for your patience.
Well, thanks, Konstantinos. What I'm going to argue, based on what Konstantinos said, is that the questions of collective imaginaries is critical to the governance of emerging technosciences. If we want to define the appropriate policy frameworks, including national and global level, we have to embrace the complexity of what is an imaginary. Because this question of how we imagine our future and we imagine the role of technoscience is critical. Why? Well, because the way technology and society interplay are very complex. And we tend to forget the power of imagination. I'll give you an example of how this power has represented a key influence in our world. And I'm going to argue that the writer, the novelist Jules Verne, who wrote From Earth to the Moon, a piece of literature, played a key role in empowering humanity to travel the cosmos. Without the power of him articulating a grand narrative of us humans traveling beyond our planet, it would not have been possible for scientists to imagine the power of that. So the process by means of which engineers and scientists imagine what is possible and seek to move towards that universe of possibilities is heavily influenced by imaginaries, by the literature. Today's literature has moved away from, today's media, has moved away from literature only and moved mostly towards movies and productions, including now virtual reality. But the basic principle prevails. And I'm going to move one step further in saying that the very notion of artificial intelligence is a collective imaginary. It's a notion which is contested, which boundaries are not well defined, and which represents a collective projection. On the notion of AI, we project collectively a lot of fears, hopes, aspirations, and that notion in and of itself is political. So in a way, we have a duty. We have a duty to collectively seek to define what is this future that we want to project on, and what is the role that technology and technoscience should play. This is key to democracy. That's really our duty. And the process by means of which we imagine, because it's political, has to be diverse and inclusive. That's why one thing I typically argue when I'm invited to speak at, let's say, OECD or with the French Parliament or any other political arena is that we need to bring movie producers, artists, novelists, and writers around the table, not to talk only about the arts, but to talk about governance, because they play a key role. We would all have seen the release of the latest episodes of Star Wars this week. The impact on the masses, and therefore the impact on the democratic process of this socio-technical imaginary is really critical. And to try and bound what I'm saying in a bit more of a theoretical framework, I'm going to rely on a key concept in the field of science and technology studies, which we call socio-technical imaginary. I'm going to argue that AI needs to be redefined and needs to be deconstructed as a socio-technical imaginary. And that's in the field of STS, a concept that we use to apprehend the complexity and the political aspects, the heavily political aspects of what is involved when we design the future. So let me read this one loud because it's important. What is a socio-technical imaginary? Well, it's a collectively held, institutionally stabilized, and publicly performed visions of a desirable future, animated by shared understandings of forms of social life and social order, attainable through and supportive of advances in science and technology. So we tend to see space, boundaries, cities, countries are political beasts, beasts worthy of political battle to define what we want to do. What we're trying to argue here is that time, not only space, time-space is a political beast. And so whenever any actor with a lot of money, with a lot of mind, projects a desirable future, he or she or it has a major impact on a collective, I would say, history. And so to give you an example of another socio-technical imagery which intersects heavily with AI, we talk a lot this day about the fourth industrial revolution. Well, that's a typical example of a socio-technical imaginary with a lot of implications. And I'm probably going to stop there to leave some time to more time to other speakers to express their views. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, Nico, thank you so much, and Konstantinos as well. Thank you so much for a really meaty and deep opening from both of you. Really appreciate it. Arohi, now going to toss it over to you. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on the subject as well. Arohi.
Great, thank you. So as Nico mentioned, our techno-scientific imaginaries are very important and crucial because they illustrate our societal hopes, fears, and fantasies. The relationship between artificial intelligence as narrated by science fiction movies in recent decades and the socio-technical imaginary related to intelligent systems has evolved quite significantly, and it signals changes to our own perception of man and machine relationship. In the 1970s to the 1990s, say for example, AI systems played mainly the role of mirroring crisis in human identity. And in such narratives, AI presented a risk and a possible threat to mankind. During the last decade, this has shifted so that stories focus more on forecasting of a future in which intelligent systems actually try to take their own place within the human social environment. As mentioned, our global civic debate, which we are currently running, aims to better understand through collective intelligence what the current imaginaries are in artificial intelligence, deconstruct some of the myths, and collectively reimagine a plausible future for humanity. We're doing this through a curated online forum that is open and accessible to anybody. You can visit the Imaginary section through the link presented here on the slide. And so far, we've come across some very interesting and detailed storytelling submissions from participants around what it would be like to live in 2050. So what I'd like to do is just take a few minutes to share some of our community's imaginaries. Firstly, through their submissions, the imaginaries that they project is of a world and a way of life in 30 years that is starkly different compared to where we stand today. The combination of AI with biotechnology advances, information technology advances, and other techno-revolutions that we are currently undergoing seem to irrevocably change humanity. For example, in Imagining Life in 2050, one of our contributors writes that their firstborn son is the first generation to have a biological chip installed in his brain, and they feel excited but also anxious with the thought of their son taking part in this incredible experience. That is the beginning of a new era and the possibility to better their own life. But the writer ends with very mixed feelings about such augmentation to mankind. Many such submissions imagine a future where AI effectively and biologically changes the essence of what it is to be human. Second, there is a real question of how humans adjust to this new era of AI and robotics, especially pertaining to who is actually the leader and the follower in the human and AI relationship. In the age of productivity, not only do our personal AI assistants take on all the mundane tasks, they also take on the mere consciousness of humans. Humans could focus on creating, freed of doing things, but also freed of dealing with our own AI assistants. The AI is autonomous and trusted. We have forgotten what to eat, when to sleep, how to go from one place to the other. We were more than happy to delegate some of our consciousness. It couldn't be too harmful, could it? Writes one of the participants. And another one poses several questions around very human experiences, such as, would we still write in our notebooks? What would become of our way of thinking and our ability to read a book? We have absolutely no idea. So in such imaginaries of the future, a questioning and a caution of how much agency we automatically defer to AI systems is evident, along with the notion of ensuring that humans continue to live a purposeful and thoughtful life. Finally, and on a rather positive outlook, many of our community members in the debate hold a strong view that AI can actually enable more inclusive communities in our world. One contributor takes the view of the elderly being considered as a financial asset more than a liability, with their guaranteed universal basic income creating a protected class, and this section of the demographic actually contributing to the richness of life rather than being a burdenful cost to future generations. Another participant paints a rather compassionate picture of a world where AI works to enable blind people to visualize the environment around them, posing a future where image recognition and camera systems can tell stories of what the individual cannot see and make them feel empowered. So, of course, there are many, many imaginaries of AI across countries and societies. And what our civic debate aims to do is to confront and align value systems across the globe so that we can better understand the impact of AI on humanity and then create an informed governance framework that harness the benefits and address the challenges. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, Arohi, thank you so much, and thanks for those visuals. And congratulations again on all the great work that the platform is doing and allowing all those great conversations. And we'll have that link up again at the end of the presentation. Really thrilled to have my friend Tess, who is the Executive Director of AI for All, a fantastic organization. Tess, please take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And to echo what some of the other speakers have touched on, it is critical to have these imaginaries around the future that we want to create. But I would challenge us to ask, who is doing the imagining? When we imagine a future where AI supports and improves our human capabilities, and the technology is used to solve the world's most pressing problems, like some of the examples that Arohi brought up, or other examples in AI working alongside humans to help improve education and help teachers personalize curriculum for students who learn in different ways, or enabling doctors to make better diagnoses, or giving the elderly people and people with disabilities mobility through assistive robotics. And how about forward-thinking and proactive policies to address the potentially problematic effects of AI and these technologies? But in order to maximize the potential for these visions and these imaginaries to come to pass, and also to mitigate the ethical risks like bias in algorithms, and really ensure a beneficial development of this technology, we need to democratize access and build a broad community of thinkers and doers in AI. By bringing diverse experiences and viewpoints into AI research, AI development, AI policy, education, we'll automatically see more innovative and creative outputs that better meet the changing needs of our society. And so that's why we started AI for All. AI for All is a nonprofit working to increase diversity and inclusion in AI, and was co-founded by Fei Li, who is the director of Stanford AI Lab, as well as other technologists who are well known in the field. So we are working to expand awareness of AI and lifting up diverse voices in the field, and really creating pathways into AI for underrepresented talent through education and mentorship programs across the U.S. and eventually globally. And our programs recruit underrepresented young people, high school students, in partnership with top university AI labs that so far include Stanford, Princeton, UC Berkeley, Carnegie Mellon, and Simon Fraser, and Boston University. And we bring young people into their labs for a 3-week residential program, and they get connected to role models and mentors in the field and help build their confidence and support along their career pathway. We teach basic concepts in machine learning and AI, problem solving, and critical thinking. But really for the bulk of this time, students are working on research projects related to research actually being done in a lab. They've worked on projects to make hospitals safer using computer vision, using natural language processing on Twitter to find people in need after a natural disaster, and making driving safer and more accessible through autonomous vehicles. And during our alumni program, we connect them with ongoing opportunities, companies, and mentors. But we also invest in their leadership early, because giving them the tools with AI really lights a fire within them, and they immediately become change makers in their own communities and go far beyond we could ever imagine. Since our organization began just last March, 1/3, or actually more, of our alumni have gone on to create their own AI programs in their communities, teaching AI and computer science to middle schoolers from backgrounds underrepresented, running girls' AI clubs, hosting AI art workshops, and hackathons. We provide seed funding and support, but the young people are actually coming up with these ideas and executing them on their own. In the couple of months that we've been around, our students, these are high school students, remember, have reached over 500 people this way. So for example, Stephanie, who is a Mexican-American high schooler living in a low-income family and community in a rural part of California, she's starting an AI club at her public high school, which doesn't offer computer science or anything like this. Or Annika, who's going to college next fall and plans to study AI, and she said, I'd be pursuing a completely different path if I hadn't gone to AI for All and fell in love with artificial intelligence. She started something called Bite Size, which is for middle school girls that teaches computer science and AI, and she herself has already impacted 70 other young people. Or recently, Amy, an alumni from our Stanford program, she won the Best Paper Award at the NIPS Machine Learning for Healthcare workshop, and there were over 150 submissions, all of them from adults, except for Amy, who is 17 years old. and she participated in a computer vision for healthcare research project at her time at AI for All. And she fell in love with it and continued to work on the project, which led to the paper which won her the award. So these are just some examples of the future leaders in AI. Just imagine what we can accomplish when we invest in them, when we democratize access and bring a broader group of thinkers and doers to advance and shape AI and solve problems that matter to them. We can really unlock AI's potential to benefit humanity and solve some of today and tomorrow's greatest challenges. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Tess, thank you so much. What a fantastic and inspiring organization that AI for All is, and very proud that the IEEE Global Initiative that Konstantinos mentioned that I'm executive director for, we just added a committee of high school students made up of the AI for All graduates, which we're honored because we need to learn from them, right? Meaning, how do you reach young people best is, here's a crazy idea, ask them what their imaginaries are and what their thoughts are. So thank you so much to all of our presenters. We already have some good comments in the chat. So so first, actually, Konstantinos, we have a question for you from Cyrus, who is has been on previous webinars with us. He said, Konstantinos, what initiatives are you seeing worldwide that are tackling socio-technical imaginaries regarding AI with well-being in mind? And Konstantinos, do you have any thoughts off the top of your head?
So it is difficult to see everything. We don't have a panopticon, but of course there are people coming to us and speaking to us, and we see that it is not, of course, only the global initiative of IEEE who are addressing this heads-on. Very recently we had a discussion with a major broadcasting organization globally, and this is very much on the radar, and what they can do from their perspective to bring to the audiences and to the public the stories that are really important about it, and also how to promote these ideas that we've been talking about, because at the end it is what are the imaginaries that can promote our self-determination, democracy, and really freedom at the end. And this goes also beyond well-being, because well-being, it is, let's say, more the social well-being. It is about justice and so on. And this is very political at the end. It is, but also the artists, and as was said also by Nico, the artist can play a very important role, because I can hold a speech here for half an hour, but let's say a good movie or an image or can be much more powerful or make misunderstood. There are some very good artists out there that have been in the past who bring these things and who really are appealing not only to our ratio, to our rationality, but also to our emotions, to our emotional intelligence, and try to connect us to the world, because this is what we're needing. What we need is to connect ourselves to spirituality and to things that are not only immediately tangible and evident. This is my opinion, and this is my belief, and I say this very openly.
Thank you, Konstantinos. Appreciate it. Okay, I'm just going to keep going through questions from Colleen Chien, and I'm assuming this will be, Nico, for you and Arohi. Colleen asks, how long will the community for commenting on Imaginaries be open? So how much longer is the work that you guys are leading going forth?
I'll take this one if that's okay. That's a great question. So we started this initiative back in September, and it will last, and it's open to everybody on aicivicdebate.org until the end of March. So right now we are using a collective intelligence platform where there's various discussion threads. AI Imaginaries is one of the topics. There are several others also. But yeah, it's open for the next just a little over 3 months.
Wonderful. Thank you. But I have a question from Tony Solomindes. Tony has a question for Tess, or a comment and a question. Tony says, Tess, I love the vision and mission of AI for all. I wonder how you use Imaginaries in your work.
Yeah, great question. I think our vision is really that if you give more people access to these technologies, that they come up with the visions. And that's really what we've seen played out in our work. So instead of AI for all betting on one specific future for AI, we really believe that ensuring a good future means involving everyone in the creation of that. And a lot of what we teach and expose people to is AI, what we call AI for good, or AI for humanity's benefit, AI for solving problems. So thinking of it as a tool that people can apply to challenges that they're seeing in their communities. So rather than saying, oh, well, you know, this particular thing is going to happen, or making predictions, we're trying to really be proactive and giving the students and young people in different populations that aren't currently part of the conversation and part of shaping this, the opportunity to build skills and be able to use these tools. And what we find is that just naturally, when more people are trying to use these tools to solve problems, they end up using it for good. And I think that's because, you know, young people are hungry to make an impact for the most part. And when we can tap into that, it creates something pretty profound, that we see people developing these leadership skills and feeling empowered to address the things that are coming up in their own lives and communities. And so I think if we continue to do that, you know, we have the highest chance of ensuring a good future and a good use of these technologies, instead of, you know, some of the things that we're seeing today, like algorithms being used incorrectly that disproportionately marginalize certain groups, or are just used to maximize profit, which isn't a bad thing at all, but we can also think bigger and solve, you know, some of the most pressing challenges, hopefully, when we really democratize access. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you for your question.
Awesome. Thank you, Tess. Some great comments in the IM chat from folks like Thomas Caballo as well, in terms of thank you so much for comments as well as questions. Thomas had mentioned here, it seems that the Imaginaries are laying out a horizon for the future of artificial intelligence, anywhere from now until 30 years from now, to capture the vision of where we're going, and more importantly, what to avoid and what needs to be researched. I'm going to have you hold that thought in your head while I also read a second reflection. Aviva said, thank you for a very interesting event. You're welcome, Aviva. Thanks for attending. A thought. Imply that inviting artists, or the implication that inviting artists to the table, that doesn't necessarily mean the direction we're going in is changed in any way. Art mirrors and predicts, but we know from artificial intelligence too, how easily we can replicate our bad intentions and behaviors. So a good kind of cautionary thought there. So I threw a lot at you, but I wanted you to respond to any of that you wanted to touch on.
I think that's an interesting point. You know, as I mentioned in my introduction, Imaginaries formulate our societal values and hopes and dreams. And so artists and computer scientists, if they are of the same civilizational boundaries and hold similar values, then yes, that change will be incremental. But we do get closer to a more inclusive discussion and vision of the future by inviting diverse individuals and stakeholders, and also opening up the conversation. As you know, much of what Tess said, I 100% agree with what she's doing, and I'm very impressed to see all of the inclusion of young people. I would also say that it's important to have cross-civilizational discussion. So not only is deep interdisciplinarity needed, but we also need to take the conversation from the East to the West, because imaginaries and views of imaginaries differ very significantly. One could argue perhaps more dystopian in the West and utopian or practical in the East in the case of China and Japan.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. While we do these last couple of questions, these are links, and hopefully they're clickable. If not, because we're going to leave them on the screen here long enough for you to see links in terms of for AI for All, for the civic debate, for IEEE with regards to the initiative. I will do a shameless plug here as Executive Director of the IEEE Global Ethics Initiative. Our paper, Ethically Aligned to Design, the second version, came out last week. And there's, to Arohi's last point, a fantastic section. It's a newer section for version 2 called Classical Ethics in AIS, or Autonomous and Intelligent Systems. And it talks a lot about exactly what Arohi just said. There's information about Confucianism, Buddhism, Shinto ethics, Ubuntu ethics. It's a huge, or it was a huge eye-opener for me as a Westerner to really get a sense of how these paradigms of and imaginaries, in one sense, how ethical traditions are formed are very, very different from the West to the East. And they inform and help each other sort of think about new ways to consider ethical considerations. Okay, so next, I'm going to go to Konstantinos for this one. This is a good one for you, Konstantinos. From Abel Gonzalez, asks, can we really control the outcome of the development of artificial intelligence? Konstantinos.
Yes, thank you. I wanted really also to take the floor now, and we can take control of everything because it is us doing things. It depends on how we act now. We have to act now to regain some agency. And also, we have to understand what we're talking about. For instance, in the work we're doing around the global initiative of IEEE, we stopped talking about AI because we don't understand what this is. I believe this is more of marketing and propaganda than anything to do with science. We prefer to talk about systems because it's about systems that we create. It is engineered systems, it is computational systems, which are supposed to do something, and we have to define what they want them to do and what we don't want them to do. And if we don't address it now, then we may lose more and more control. And who is the we again? It is the explicit societal, let's say, legitimation. Then we will have things imposed upon us which we don't want to have, and they're already there. I mean, we have lost total control of our digital identity, and this is very serious. I'm not worried so much about robots. I'm very much worried about my position as active citizen in this world. And we're losing the possibilities of being autonomous political actors if we don't control the information around us about our personal life. And I would like also to make a short addition to the question that Cyrus asked before, which are the actors are there, which we can ally to, and so on. But let's take one of the biggest imaginary of our time, which is the GDP. And this is, as Joe Ito says, this is a single currency. Everything turns around this, about, let's say, growth and profit and in exchange terms. And this is a huge imaginary, which is very one-dimensional. And we cannot accept anymore that this imaginary is the one that dominates everything in our lives. And we're not the only are saying this. I mean, there are venerable organizations like OECD and so on which try to find other ways to measure success and achievement in a society beyond GDP. And they have created a directorate about well-being and so on. And we're working together with them. We would like to work together. So everybody who believes that this one-dimensional imaginary, which is profit or GDP, and you believe this is not enough anymore, then we should join forces and try really to think another one which takes into account what really is important in our human lives. And we have to do it now, and then we have a chance to control the outcomes of this technology. Otherwise, it would serve only this single currency, a little bit destructive.
Wonderful. Thank you, Konstantinos. And yeah, as Konstantinos knows, I'm a huge fan of what's called the Beyond GDP, almost a movement, where it's not anti-GDP, it's, as Konstantinos was referring to, expanding the lens. Making money, like Tess said before, making money is not the issue. It's the exponential focus on exponential growth, which it becomes kind of the only lens that can be very problematic, as Konstantinos was saying. We're winding down, but I have at least one or two more questions before we wrap up. Arohi, I think this is a good one for you, and then I'll ask Tess one more question, and we'll probably be almost done. And I'll try to do justice to your name and to the question, because it's a great question, but it's Guilherme Silva, and the question is, wondering in what concerns with regards to alterity, which I know is a great term I know from Sherry Turkle's work, or the relationship between humans and AI machines. Guilherme says, I see that a lot of the talks over that relationship implicitly take AI machines instrumentally as a tool for development of human society. But, and here's the question, Arohi, is that the only possible view? Can we think of AI and human society as constituting, changing one another in that very relation? So what do you think, Arohi?
Great question, and absolutely, there are many imaginaries of how the human and AI relationship evolves. The current one of humans deferring an increasing amount of daily tasks and then becoming almost subservient to technology is one option, but it's not the only one. That is, and you can see on our civic debate, people have laid out many possibilities and very detailed examples of how they actually develop a relationship and what that relationship means actually vis-a-vis other human relationships in life in 2050.
Wonderful. Thank you. And we're almost done. Tess, I'll ask you one last question, and you got about 2 or 3 minutes to respond. I get so encouraged about the work you're doing, and we had that call last week or so with your high school students and the excitement they have and the, incredible vision about, the world that they're already hugely part of, the digital world, et cetera. Anyway, along the lines of what you talked about with your opening talk, can you give us another story of one of your students that you find most inspiring? Because I think that's a great way to kind of wrap up in terms of an imaginary for the future as inspired by a young person.
Sure, absolutely. And I have so many. That's the great thing about my job is I get to actually see all these amazing young people. I'll talk about Create, which was actually started by 3 of our alumni. And this was something related to the discussion earlier about artists. And these 3 students came up with the idea of how do we actually get people interested in AI? We have realized its importance and its incredible potential to make change and also be a tool for social good. But, how do we get younger people interested? And so they actually developed a workshop series to get younger students interested in AI through art and actually created some neural art projects together. And they ran this workshop series for middle school students. And it was very, very successful, and they're actually thinking about running it again. And so, again, I think this is one of many examples that I could share where when we give people the tools, more diverse individuals, and really think about inclusion, they create things that we could have never imagined and bring together things that we can't anticipate, like the connection of AI and art. Another student just wrote a blog post. If you want to check out our blog on aiforall.org/blog or just go on our website, you can see a lot of our students write up their experiences and their projects, and you can read from their voices directly. But another one combines her passion with creative writing with AI. And so I think, I'm inspired every day by these young people who will someday be the leaders in AI. And so I encourage you to go there if you want an uplifting, way to think about this conversation and listen to these young people who have so much to offer us. So thank you for having us, and I look forward to continuing this important conversation with many of you.
Fantastic, Tess. And with that, it's a great positive focus on the future and an imaginary with regards to what we want to do in the future. I want to say thank you to all of our speakers and presenters, to Konstantinos, Arohi, Nico, and Tess. And just as a last reminder, these are some links you can use to follow up. The top link is focused on the IEEE initiative that Konstantinos and I talked about. Then you have AI for All, which is Tess's organization. And the bottom two, the civic debate. Make sure to go to that and participate in that awesome, very interactive platform where, again, you can see so many really exciting variations on the future, and you can weigh in on that. And the Future Society is also the group that's helping drive that. If you have any final questions as attendees, I want to say thank you so much to all of our attendees and participants, and really appreciate also the great questions and observations we had on the IM chat. It was a fantastic conversation. Please feel free to email me or get in contact with me. I mentioned that report, Ethically Aligned Design. That's got that classical ethics section in it. By the way, it's free. I should have mentioned it's free to download. And you can find out more about that by going to the website that we mentioned above. Right at the moment, we don't have our next webinar planned, but we should have information about our next webinar from IEEE Standards Association, and also ones focused on these issues of autonomous and intelligent systems and ethics. And when we have that information, we will have it posted probably early in the new year. And as the final thank you, I want to say a big thank you to David and to Brett, who made the technology aspect of this possible, along with everyone at the IEEE Standards Association. And with that, I will wrap up, say thank you. I've been your host, John Havens, and wishing everyone a happy set of holidays, whatever you celebrate, and a really happy and awesome New Year celebration. Thanks so much, and have a great day. Bye-bye.